Smartphone Gaming Performance Investigation, Media Units versus Retail Reality. In the world of smartphone performance, numbers dominate the conversation. Every year, new processors are announced with higher clock speeds, improved GPU cores, more advanced AI engines, and record-breaking benchmark scores. Launch events celebrate performance charts. Review headlines highlight peak results. Ranking tables become marketing material. But behind those numbers, a simple question remains. Do the phones consumers actually buy perform the same way as the units sent to reviewers? That question is what led to this investigation. Over the past year, we noticed something unusual. Certain flagship Android phones were posting extremely strong benchmark and gaming results in early reviews. But once those devices reached consumers, user feedback did not always align with those results. Reports of thermal throttling, lower sustained frame rates, unexpected battery drain, so we decided to test it ourselves. Instead of relying on media review units provided by manufacturers, we purchased retail devices directly from the market. 44 smartphones in total. Flagship models, gaming phones, high-performance devices from multiple major brands. Every unit was bought anonymously, just like any customer would. Then we recreated our full gaming benchmark suite under identical conditions. Ambient temperature was controlled. Factory settings were restored. Latest official firmware was installed. No external cooling accessories were used unless they were included in standard packaging. We measured frame rate over extended gaming sessions, frame pacing stability, power consumption, thermal behavior, touch response latency, and overall sustained performance. And what we found was not minor. It was systematic. In many cases, the retail units performed noticeably worse than the media units previously tested. Lower average frame rates, higher power draw for the same workload, more aggressive thermal throttling, reduced sustained GPU frequencies. The difference was large enough that it could not be explained by random silicon variation. To understand this properly, we need to explain how smartphone performance scaling works. Modern smartphone processors rely on dynamic frequency scaling. When a workload begins, CPU and GPU cores boost to their maximum frequencies. Power limits are temporarily relaxed. Thermal buildup has not yet reached equilibrium. For short benchmarks lasting 1 or 2 minutes, this produces impressive results. But under sustained load, heat accumulates. Power management algorithms intervene. Clock speeds stabilize at lower sustained frequencies. This is normal behavior. However, what we observed suggests that media review units may have been configured differently. In several devices, the retail model reduced GPU frequency much earlier than the previously tested media unit. Power draw was capped at lower sustained wattage. Thermal throttling curves began sooner. To verify this was not measurement error, we repeated the tests multiple times. Same game, same graphics settings, same environment, results remained consistent. For certain brands, the performance gap between media and retail units ranged from 5% to over 15% in sustained gaming scenarios. That is not trivial. In competitive gaming, 5% can determine whether a device maintains stable 60 frames per second or begins to drop into the low 50s. And this gap was not isolated to one manufacturer. Multiple brands exhibited similar patterns. Gaming-focused phones that previously demonstrated extremely high sustained wattage in review tests were unable to maintain those levels in retail configuration. In some cases, advertised performance modes were either unavailable or behaved differently. One particularly notable example involved frame rate reporting. Under analysis, certain devices appeared to report frame rates aligned with display refresh rates rather than actual rendered frames under specific conditions. When cross-checking using external monitoring tools, discrepancies became apparent. This suggests the possibility of software-level optimization targeted at recognized benchmarking tools or specific applications. To test for this, we duplicated gaming workloads under renamed executables. In certain instances, performance scaling behavior changed, not dramatically in every case, but measurably. OU for watching, and we'll continue pursuing clarity wherever data leads. This raises questions about application recognition mechanisms. Such mechanisms are not inherently illegal. Manufacturers often optimize for popular apps. However, if performance parameters are elevated specifically when recognized benchmark software is detected, then benchmark results no longer reflect typical real-world behavior. Beyond frame rates, power efficiency told an equally important story. Some media units sustained high performance at elevated power draw levels, sometimes exceeding what the retail unit allowed under identical conditions. When testing retail models, sustained power consumption limits were lower. Lower wattage means reduced sustained frequency. Reduced sustained frequency means lower stable frame rates. This affects not only performance but also thermal comfort. Surface temperature measurements further confirmed differences. Media units frequently operated at higher internal temperatures before throttling occurred. Retail units began frequency reduction earlier to maintain lower thermal ceilings. From a hardware protection standpoint, conservative retail tuning is understandable. But from a transparency standpoint, it means the performance presented during review cycles may not represent what customers receive. Battery drain testing reinforced this pattern. Under 1-hour gaming sessions, some retail devices consume significantly more battery percentage while delivering lower sustained frame rates compared to media test data. That combination, lower performance and higher drain, is particularly concerning. It suggests not simply tuning differences but potentially bin selection differences. Silicon manufacturing produces variation. Higher quality chips can sustain higher frequencies at lower voltage. If review units are assembled using selectively binned silicon, performance discrepancies would naturally emerge. While we cannot directly verify bin selection practices, the consistency of the pattern across brands suggests deliberate optimization for review cycles. Importantly, not every device demonstrated large discrepancies. In our testing, Apple's retail units matched previously recorded performance metrics. Sustained frequency curves aligned. Thermal behavior was consistent. Power draw levels remained within expected ranges. This consistency is notable. It indicates that performance parity between review units and retail units is achievable. Which brings us to a broader industry discussion. Benchmark rankings influence consumer perception. Consumer perception influences sales performance. Sales performance influences design priorities. When peak numbers become primary marketing tools, the incentive to optimize specifically for benchmark visibility increases. Short-duration benchmarks are easy to win. Sustained stability is more difficult. But real-world usage depends on sustained stability. Most users do not run benchmarks for 30 seconds. They game for an hour. They record video continuously. They multitask. They navigate in warm environments. Under these conditions, thermal equilibrium defines experience. Our investigation does not claim malicious intent without evidence. However, the measurable differences between retail and media units suggest that review ecosystems must adapt. Independent retail testing should become standard practice. Extended duration stress tests should accompany peak benchmark charts. Frame pacing graphs should replace average FPS headlines. Power efficiency per watt should be considered alongside raw performance. Because performance is not a single number. It is a balance between power, heat, stability, and longevity. If a device achieves exceptional results only under conditions not available to typical users, then those results are not representative. Transparency benefits everyone. Manufacturers gain credibility. Reviewers gain trust. Consumers gain accurate expectations. The goal of this investigation is not to create controversy. It is to clarify. When purchasing a high-performance smartphone, users deserve to know whether the device in their hand behaves the same way as the one used for promotional testing. Data suggests that, in many cases, it does not. Moving forward, we believe performance testing must evolve. Long-duration gaming sessions, multiple application states, thermal plateau measurements, battery degradation modeling. These metrics provide a more accurate picture than peak synthetic scores. Ultimately, sustainable performance defines user experience. A phone that briefly spikes to high frequencies but quickly throttles may appear powerful on paper. A phone that maintains stable performance at slightly lower peak values may feel smoother in practice. Consistency matters more than peaks. Efficiency matters more than spikes. Reliability matters more than marketing claims. As processors become more advanced and AI workloads grow heavier, sustained thermal design will become even more critical. This investigation highlights an inflection point. Consumers are becoming more informed. Performance tools are becoming more precise. Discrepancies are harder to conceal. Transparency will increasingly become a competitive advantage. Until then, independent verification remains essential. Because in the end, performance is not about how fast a device can run for a benchmark. It is about how well it performs when you rely on it every day. Under real workloads, over extended time, without special conditions. And that difference changes everything.